If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.
A special summer benefit tonight for charity and for There Goes My Hero. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the Super Bowl MVP, Joe Flacco, out with us tonight. Padone Yale House. You know, I remember when you pulled up in the beater Volvo with the Jersey plate 6 years ago, and it was just sort of like the whole, you know, can you do this or not? And what this thing has become for you, I don't even know how to put this into words, because I remember people didn't come out and make such a big stink about you.
Yeah, well, neither do I. I mean, this city's awesome, though, so, it's not very surprising when you throw together an event like this and you have so many people come out and have fun and support the community.
Well, I got Erik Sauer up here from There Goes My Hero. Give it up for Erik, everyone. So by show of hands, how many of you are familiar with bone marrow transplant? How many of you don't know anything? How many of you are still not, including Joe, how many of you are still not on the registry? We're going to change that tonight. Joe, you're not on the registry, are you?
No.
All right, let's tell you why we need to be on the registry. Erik is the founder of There Goes My Hero. My wife was diagnosed with leukemia on March the 20th. So it was 97 days ago today. My wife, doctor walked in and said, you have leukemia. You don't have a good leukemia or intermediate leukemia. You have a bad, horrible leukemia. We're going to try to treat this. You're going to be in the hospital for anywhere from 30 to 60 days. She did 42 days in the hospital. The first week, we were so shell-shocked. I know many of you are friends of ours. We have our friends back here swabbing. And I didn't know where to turn. We kind of were taking on a lot of water, taking on a lot of issues, her family, my family. And three people of incredible integrity reached to me and said, you need to meet Erik Sauer. And I said, all right, well, when I get everything together, let me figure it out. And on day 10 at the hospital, Erik came down and you told us your story. Tell everyone here tonight your story.
Well, Nestor, thank you. Joe, thank you. Appreciate you guys being here, having us here. I appreciate all our volunteers. Anybody in a red shirt here tonight? Guys, thank you very much for coming out. The volunteers make us go, so we really appreciate them. Nestor, yeah, I was diagnosed with leukemia in, May of 2008. And it was a similar path as Jen.
You remember May of 2008, right? You got drafted in April of 8, right?
Yeah.
There you go. All right. So that puts it in perspective as to where you were. So there you go.
I wasn't feeling very well in April of 2008. Didn't know what I had, but it ended up being a leukemia diagnosis. And it was very similar to Jen. It was a circumstance where, don't pass go, don't collect $200. You're going to go right to Hopkins and you're going to be here for a while. You have this variety of leukemia that is not going to be easily cured. You need a bone marrow transplant. And the normal protocol, and what you've probably saw with Jen, is that you go in, you get diagnosed, you start treatment. Right?
It's where it's at. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't go home and collect your stuff. It was you're not going to see your cat for a couple of weeks or a couple of months. So
the difference with me, though, is and my family's sitting over here. Raise your hands, guys. That's Joe and Ian.
All Delaware fans, by the way.
My wife, Lisa.
Erik's a Delaware blue hen. We forgot to point that out.
Lisa,
Joe already's nodding his head.
Lisa's a blue hen.
There you go.
Maybe some blue hens in the making over here, too. But Joey, the redheaded guy right here, was my wife was farther.
Yeah, pull it closer to. There you go.
Closer to.
Yeah,
all right, there we go.
There we go.
My wife was 9 months pregnant with Joe, my little Joe. So I got diagnosed, and they said, go home, have your baby, come back and start treatment. So we went home, we had Joe, and then a week later I came back to Hopkins and started my treatments. First time was 24 days, went through that treatment, felt pretty good. Unfortunately, I relapsed in about 6 weeks. When you relapse with leukemia, you have to start over. I did a second treatment, that was a 21-day treatment, held my remission through that. I was scheduled to have a bone marrow transplant in, I believe it was October of 2008. My bone marrow donor had been lined up. He ended up getting sick. So he got bronchitis, and we had to postpone my transplant.
So when you have a donor that gets sick, you don't just go get another donor. Joe gets sick, we get a different quarterback. You don't get a different quarterback, right?
No.
I mean, you know what I mean? It just doesn't work that way. Would be as good as you, Joe, by the way, but that's all right.
No, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. What happens when your donor goes away is you can't allow your bone marrow to come back. If your bone marrow grows back, it's going to be cancerous. So what has to happen, then you have to have another round of chemotherapy. So now I'm on round 2, round 3. My body's starting to break down. I'm getting pneumonia. I'm getting infections. I'm getting fungal infections. You know, I was blind for 3 days. You know, I was diabetic for 2 months. I mean, all these things happen when you don't have an immune system. So what ended up happening is we found another donor, again, kind of through the miracle of the bone marrow registry, which we'll talk a little bit more about tonight. Got another bone marrow donor, and then I got sent to transplant. So right where Jen is now, I had my bone marrow.
It took you 6 months to get there.
Took me about 6 months, which is a long time, particularly when you have leukemia, and it's a fast-moving disease, and if it comes back, you can't go to transplant. You know, the transplant's the only thing that can save your life.
Now tell everybody about your donor and how this whole thing happened, that you're still here with us.
So I have a donor. I'm torn. You know, we have a soccer game coming up. It's Germany and the United States. My bone marrow donor's from Germany. She was 19 years old. I was 36 at the time, so she's 19.
And swabbed at an event just like this.
She was swabbed at an event like this in Germany. She had a judo coach that passed away, unfortunately, from leukemia. She registered about a year later. They notified her of me, and she had to follow a path. You know, I get sick. You know, transplant off. Isabel in Germany gets postponed. You know, she would have to drive through the Black Forest to a hospital in Stuttgart.
Incidentally, tell me about that. She drove 3 hours to
3
give
hours,
her marrow.
3 hours to the hospital, and it was canceled. So she was at that hospital a few times.
Our donor was canceled last week. I don't know if any of you know this. My wife was actually admitted to the hospital 2 weeks ago tomorrow, checked in, and her liver number was elevated, and they sent her home and said, we can't do the transplant. You can only imagine how that went over in my household 12 days ago. They sent her home. Her number came back down. She went back in last week. Literally, as we sit here tonight at Padonia Ale House, it is about 2 in the morning in Europe right now. We believe her donor is coming from Europe. We've been led to believe that. And at some point in the next 6 to 8 hours from right now, the donor, whoever this person is driving to a hospital to give their marrow in the middle of the night tonight while we're asleep. My wife's having her transplant on Thursday.
That's the experience of my donor. That's exactly what happened, and I would venture to say that donor could be from Germany as well. That country has some of the deepest number of donors in the world, so it's very likely she could have a German donor as well. So that marrow was flown.
So I got to root for Germany now on Thursday. Oh, here we go. Don't tell me that.
Well, I have German DNA now, so I have female DNA and I have German DNA.
I'm hoping it's coming from Holland because I want to root for the Dutch, but that's just me.
So that marrow, like Jen, it was flown from Frankfurt. It landed in Dulles. It drove up 95 and was put into me in about a 24-hour span.
My wife's bone marrow transplant will happen between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m. on Friday morning, sometime in the overnight, 48 hours from now. So it's kind of serendipitous that Joe wound up picking tonight. I thought she would have had transplant last week. We're in the midst of it. She almost came out tonight. She's actually feeling really good. She's in day 5 of her second round of chemo, and tomorrow she has radiation. But for everyone that's asking, she's doing really well. Took her to lunch today, walked around the harbor last night, almost went to the Oriole game last night. Almost. We wouldn't have made it to the walk-off.
Take it easy.
Take it easy. Well, you met my wife.
Do what you
how
can.
she goes. But, I go as she goes. So you found out where your donor came from?
About 18 months later, I signed a release that said I wanted to meet her, and almost immediately she responded back that she indeed wanted to meet me, because ultimately it's on the donor. It's an anonymous process. So I only learned of her a year or two after the transplant. So we brought her over to the United States in 2011. We took her to Baltimore, took her to Philadelphia, saw Liberty Bell, took her to New York, put her on front row seats for the Lion King.
Did you stop off at Newark there and see the house that Joe built? No?
We drove past it.
Oh, we drove past it. All right.
At 80 miles an hour.
All right, that's fine. That's fine.
But we brought her here, and then last summer I took my family to Germany, and we met her and her family. She's 24. She still lives at home. She's still a college student.
Tell us about There Goes My Hero, because I've told Joe about the organization. I've told everyone here. It's been 97 days, everyone. My wife is getting her transplant on day 100. Crazy.
Significant. The time and days are significant. I was hospitalized all in 107 days. I spent another 6 months going back and forth to Hopkins every day. And do you work? No. Do you make a living? Do you still have a family? Do all these things still go on around you? But you're going through treatments, and it's intense, and you're tired, and it's draining, and you're sick, and you're well, and you're sick, and you're well, and it's this whole ebb and flow. And one of the things that happened for me was I had a great group of friends. My friends rallied, much like your friends, and I see a lot of them here tonight, rallied around me, and they brought meals to my house. And those meals were indispensable. My wife drove from Bel Air to Hopkins every day.
With a newborn and a 5-year-old.
With a newborn and a 5-year-old every day. I was hospitalized, she was there. So what we do as an organization, when I was hospitalized, I saw a lot of people that were going through this very intense experience that didn't have the support systems that I had. So what we do as an organization is we provide meals to families who are going through these treatments. We work with all 7 hospitals in Maryland that treat blood cancer, primarily Hopkins and the University of Maryland. And since 2009, we've served about 40,000 meals, over 40,000 meals, to underserved families in this community.
Give it up for There Goes My Hero and what they're doing here.
If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.